Hello, hello. Welcome back to the...
What was that?
Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Get Paid to Live podcast. My name is Iffy.
I'm Shah.
And this is a space where we explore how to live first and get paid second. Whether you're an entrepreneur, you work for someone else, or you're just curious about creating your dream life, in these episodes, you'll find inspiration, tips, and motivation on how you can navigate that process through our honest reflections as new entrepreneurs and our candid interviews with ambitious, everyday dreamers just like you and I.
Wow.
Hi, dreamers.
So what are we talking about today?
We're talking about play, and I actually am very excited to talk about this topic because I think play isn't a value of mine. We talked about values in the last episode, so check that out if you don't have yours together.
If you didn't do your
homework, watch the last episode. But playing is something that I feel like we just lose as adults, and especially I'm 26, you're 28, right? I don't hear people even use that in vocabulary anymore. And I want to bring it back.
What is play?
Play is slay.
It's like we forgot.
what it means. And I think it looks different. But when you think of children playing, we all think of the same thing, right? Like we all have the same image, I think, of us either on a playground or playing with toys. But why can't we think of that when it comes to adults? Why is it weird when we say the word play?
Yeah.
My friend, our good friend, Afsha, I love her.
Oh.
She always says let's go play. And I always thought that was so funny. Yeah. We were interns and she'd be like, oh, after work, we can go to my house and play. And I just thought that was so nostalgic thinking about that because that's what we used to say back in the day, but no one says it anymore. And even though I didn't know exactly what she meant, I just had an idea. I know it's
you go over just a bunch of toys and you're like, oh,
it's an intuitive thing. We all know what it is, but why is it so hard to visualize as adults? I think it's because we don't do it enough. We're not constantly playing, so it's uncomfortable. And I think that's so strange because why do we have to lose that just because we're we have bills now?
Do you know that study? It's a famous study in psychology about different teams. It was a team of kindergartners, team of middle schoolers, or it was a bunch of different teams.
Okay.
Of professionals and engineers and whatever.
Okay.
And the idea was to study teams and what makes an effective team.
Okay.
Well, you have all these teams. You have these engineers. You have these high school students. I actually don't know the details. I don't remember.
I
all
actually
the details.
just made all this up.
I don't remember all the details, but I remember the key takeaway was that the team of kindergartners were the best at solving the task. And it's because the explanation at least was they were willing to look stupid and make mistakes and play. And that's why they were the most effective team, because all the college students or professionals, they didn't want to look dumb in front of their peers, so they were so concerned about that they were wasting attention and energy they could be putting toward the task at hand, toward the social dynamics of it all.
Do you know what the problem was that they were trying to solve?
I don't know. It's always these silly problems. I think I actually did one when I started at Toyota. Maybe this was when I heard about.
Is this the marshmallow and sticks and stuff?
It's marshmallows and sticks, or tape and sticks.
Yeah.
It's you have to make the tallest structure or something like that.
Right. Yeah. We did that too. I think it some volunteering thing. But I think it reminds me a lot of growth mindset versus fixed mindset. Growth mindset, I feel you are willing to look stupid. You're willing to make mistakes. We actually do have the book on our bookshelf. I am yet to read it.
Yeah, we have two copies.
This
one is hers.
That's why it's untouched and there's dust on it.
It is from half price, so it's used.
Yeah. Okay. Technically it's used, but it wasn't me. But I think that growth versus fixed mindset is the vibes of the episode. We're basically
yeah. Okay.
Play your way into what you want or the life that you want to create or the goal that you're trying to achieve, whatever it is. You can't get there by thinking that there's only set paths or the right answer or the right thing. You literally have to be willing to completely unravel to become whatever it is that you want to become. So
what that is making me think, because when I think of play, I think explore. I think mistakes. I think no rules, essentially.
Yeah.
And if you're not living your dream life already, then I would assert necessarily you need to play.
Yeah.
Because your current life is not your dream life.
Right.
So how do you expect to live your dream life by just continuing to live your current life? You know, continuing to live by the same rules, not exploring new possibilities, not willing to make mistakes.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And if you kind of constrain yourself into your current life and your current situation, and the only way out of that is to play, is to explore. And so you at least have a chance of achieving your dream life.
Yeah.
But the only way to do that is through play.
Yeah. I see it like, well, how I envision play is almost like a situation where, of course, it's like rainbows and butterflies and like skipping and gumdrops. Yeah. I like picture all of that, but I don't see them like when you say mistakes and like failing. I almost don't even imagine that. It's not that it's not a part of the picture, but it
has a different meaning.
Yeah. It's like when you're actually playing, like think of when you were a child and you're like actually playing with your toys. There's not even a concept of failure,
right?
Or like things like not working, because that means when you fail, right, I think it implies that there's something right and there's something wrong.
It reminds me of when I would always paint, and you know, like my paintings were always hideous, but
we'll show up.
My rule was that there are no mistakes, just unexpected changes in direction.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it was when you were a kid. It's like there were no mistakes when you were playing. You're just like, oh, this is the new direction. You know what I mean?
Like, oh, we're taking this route today.
And it's fun and exciting and it's surprising.
There's nothing weird. It's not embarrassing. There's no cringe. Like I was just talking to my sister about this. When we were kids, we would literally, like, the first day we would get our toys, we're like playing with it like normal, right? And then like at some point, I don't know if everyone did this with their siblings, but we would essentially start making characters and shows out of the toys.
Okay.
Like we would, and it was like every day we were showing up to set.
It was like a series.
Yeah, it was a series, and we would come with the toys, and we would like, everybody got into their characters, but the character was the toy, and we would continue. It was almost like improv. We were like making a show with these toys. And that's like the epitome of like, there's no mistakes. Like we were, if a character was having a meltdown today, like my brother was playing with a toy and that one was just like, I hate everyone, I'm killing everyone. Like we just went with the plot. And I think that so like, obviously it's a smaller, funnier example, but I think that is something that we just lose more and more of as we grow up. And I think ironically, when everyone thinks of success and they think of making it, they think of like, oh, you got to get more serious. You got to get more strict. You got to get more like raw. You got to grind, you know? And I think it's actually the opposite. I say this all the time, but like when you look at these people who are really successful or have a lot of money or like whatever, when you actually watch interviews of them, which I highly encourage people, if you want to be like someone, watch interviews of people like that or try to get around them so you can understand how they think. But when you watch interviews of these people, you're like, wow, they're very like childish in nature. Like they're very like dreamy and kind of like woo-woo-y. Like, I don't know. I feel like that's not what I expected.
Pranksters.
They're merry pranksters. They are merry pranksters. Like, I don't know if I should explain that, but just look up Jeremy Strong. That's all I need to say. Think of like, I don't know, like Oprah or like Elon Musk or like sometimes even Jeff Bezos. Like when I watch him, he's very like, when he's talking about things that he enjoys, it seems like he's very like giddy. And I think even though we all have like this idea of like this like finance bro and everything, like I feel like the people who are actually living the dream, they channel in that childish energy. Yeah. Like they do often.
And like a couple examples, like not from modern times, like Albert Einstein and Richard Feynman, two very prominent physicists, they're kind of known for their pranks and like always just joking around. And you know, those people had some of the most important ideas of the 21st century. And kind of progressed all of human civilization in a lot of like, you know, important ways. So it's like
coincidence?
And the way they were doing it is they were willing to play. You know what I mean? Or not just willing, they like actively played, and that was like their thing.
Yeah, it kind of makes me sad, like thinking about how young people, like I'm not even talking about like you have like you're in your 30s and your 40s and you have kids in a house. I'm talking about like younger people are so like they're not playing. That like makes me sad. Like, because if anything in your 20s, like this is the time to play. And I'm not saying play. I mean, look, there's no mistakes. So like if your play is like getting drunk every weekend, like sure, that's an option, right? Like not necessarily one that I want to partake in, but that is a version of play. Like, but if you want to just backpack around Europe or like host families in different places, learn different like languages, programs. Like things like that. Like when did like I feel like that was when I was a kid and I was watching movies of people who were in their 20s, like that's the stuff that they were doing. And then when I'm now like in my 20s, like I do not see that. Like I feel like people around me are living like they're like 50. We all have jobs, we're all like you know, just staying in, doing nothing. Like there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's actually a lot more fun, but it's like that's all we're doing. We're not making a lot of mistakes. Like everybody wants to stay so in line, like they don't want to fail. There's like so much embarrassment, there's so much cringe, like and that's honestly why I feel like we have so many like micro celebrities and like influencers, because those are the people who are just playing and documenting it for everybody to see,
and then people are vicariously playing
through them, and they're not actually playing in their own life. And it's like, what would you do? I'm actually kind of interested, like what would most people be like if they didn't have these like influencers to like play through? Like if they had to, instead of watching somebody buy a bunch of different makeup shades and try it on, like maybe you would have to do that, because you'd be like, you know what, no one's watching, I don't care, like what's gonna happen? And I think that's why David Dobrik and, you know, Logan Paul, these people are so entertaining, because they're just like, oh, I cracked the code. Like all I have to do is just keep doing whatever the fuck I want to do and document it in a fun, entertaining way. Mr. Beast, like, you know, and then people are going to watch, and they're not doing it. They're not going to do it. And it's like, that's sad. I feel like not that you have to be doing what they're doing, but everybody should have their own version of their play. And like, I don't understand why that's not normal anymore. And maybe it's us, we live in this space where people, I don't know, I'm confused.
The first thing that comes to my mind is just we have a need for predictability, especially as we get older. You know, I feel like as people get older, we just accumulate trauma, and then, you know, we kind of burn our hand on the stove like several times in every facet of life. So we just become more conservative as we get older, and then with being more conservative, we want things to be more predictable. And exploring and playing like necessarily requires lack of predictability, because you don't know what's, you know, behind the door, you don't know what's in the forest, you know what I mean? That's why you're exploring it, you know, by definition. And that's why I feel it's so easy for kids, because everything's new, everything's novel, and then as you get older, you kind of, you know, you've learned a lot of hard lessons, and you don't want to suffer because that's uncomfortable. So I feel like all these things are so interconnected, like playing, exploring, being uncomfortable, being okay with unpredictability, being okay with uncertainty, being okay to just unexpectedly change direction if it makes sense. You know what I mean?
And it's kind of interesting that you say that, because the lack of predictability, I think, or you were saying predictability or lack of?
We crave predictability.
Oh, we crave predictability. Yes, I think that's interesting that you say that, because I feel like we're getting so much of predictability through social media and like through the internet that people don't have to do it, like they don't have to,
it's like a safe anything. Way to explore.
Like they can explore online, and they don't have to do that in their own life. Like if we didn't see what it looked like for people to do exactly what we want to do, we would have to do it. Like we would have to just explore. The curiosity would just be burning in us so much that we'd have to do it. And I think honestly that's kind of funny, because I think that's why you and I have this like deep drive to do what we're doing, because we don't see an example like exactly the way we want it.
I mean, that's the whole story behind the data entrepreneurs. I was literally looking for months for a community of like data people that do entrepreneurship, like a community specifically for them, not a community of data people and not a community of entrepreneurs, a community of both those people. And I tried, because I didn't want to start the community, because it's a lot of work. You know what I mean? It's a lot of like data people are pretty introverted typically. It's like and you know, I was working full time and I was making content, and it's like I don't have extra time. But I think at a certain point, I was like, this is important. And I just made it. I made time. I made it a priority. And I think people are getting value out of it. So I think it's worth it.
Yeah. If you're an entrepreneur and you're into data, check it out. We'll leave it in the description. I think we need that though. We need to crave it and we need to not see it. That's what makes life interesting. Like that's what is, I feel like that's what gives us purpose, you know, like when you're matching like your strengths, your abilities with your desires and things that you don't see, like you get this beautiful creation of like what you're meant to do here on earth. And it's like, I think that's what's causing a lot of like mental illness, you know, like because we are just too idle and we're just too we're not living our lives. I think when we're not living our own true lives, we just become a shell of a person, like, and nobody can do that but you know. So
yeah, I can see that, because I feel like when, to use your words, to live someone else's life, in order to do that, you not only put on a mask, but you also have to actively suppress like your natural personality. And I think that's one of the downsides of corporate, because it's such a strong culture typically, and then that social aspect has such a hold over our psychology that a lot of people, like their natural personalities, they don't fit in a corporate or professional environment.
A lot of people.
So it's like you're suffocating yourself, and then you have to like play this role of, you know, whatever. And I think, you know, you can say whatever you want about it, but I think the bottom line, the way I see it, is that think of how much energy is being wasted, like mental energy, to suppress and like project and create this character, you know, to put on the role. And it's like, what if you didn't have to do that? Like so it's not just like you get to operate at your full capacity. You know what I mean? It's like a double gain. You kind of quadruple your capacity, because you know, not only you don't have to worry about suppressing yourself, and you don't have to put on the mask. So it's like on two levels, you're relieving yourself. And so you're getting, I think, like 3-4 times as much mental energy. Yeah, you're 4Xing. And I feel like that's been my experience ever since I left corporate. Even though it was a pretty good environment, I kind of jived with everyone. There was always that entrepreneurial aspect of me that people didn't resonate with.
It wasn't thriving.
And it's like, but you'd expect that. It's like, that's the population you're interacting with. You're interacting with people that are, you know, at a corporation. And like, you know, you're not going to find entrepreneurs there. But I feel like after I left, like now I feel like I have so much energy, and it's like, it's easy for me to work. And it's like hard for me to be lazy. While it was like the opposite when I was working.
It's so crazy. And I would say this I will say this every time I get the opportunity, like your time doubles when you're not suppressing
maybe
yourself.
Even triples,
4X's. Like I think you just 1 hour or 30 minutes, like the difference when you don't have the weight of things that you don't like. And I'm talking like you have something in your life that feels like against you in a way, like it feels a little more like a weight on your shoulders. Like when you don't have that, it's just like literally physically, when you have a weight on your shoulders, you can't move as fast. Like that's the same thing. And I think corporate isn't optimized for the variety. It's not optimized for like that. That's not the point.
It's optimized to compromise, essentially, because like a corporation is a business that has found a very effective way to make a ton of money. And all they have to do is get people in to just keep the ship going. And when you're talking about a lot of people, you cannot have a culture that accommodates everyone's unique personality. It's just not possible.
It'll fall apart.
So it's not like corporations are evil or anything like that. It's like, that's just human nature. That's just like the natural way of things. Like tribes don't scale up well. Like, you can have a very strong team, like a 10-person business, 50-person business, 100-person business, but you start getting to 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 employee businesses, you're not going to have that same like strong niche community.
It's too many people. It's too many different people. It's too many people to please. And that's why you just have to pick something and everybody got to adapt.
There's bound to be misalignment. At some point.
Which is what I think we are all feeling. And I think the generations before us had different priorities. So it was easier to adapt because that actually felt good for them, because they were probably coming from all types of chaos from their parents, you know? But like we're just getting more advanced as a society. So like we don't have to do all the things that our parents had to do. And that's why we're bored when it comes to corporate jobs. Like it's not going to fulfill us in that way. If that's your situation. If you're not fulfilled, you're not fulfilled. That's, it is what it is.
I feel like we kind of went on a tangent.
We did, but it's good. You're like, I needed to get that out.
Yeah, I didn't realize I wanted to talk about that. Oh, shit.
We didn't talk about our drinks, and I just thought we should tell everybody what we're drinking today for the people listening and the people
you go first because that's impressive.
Watching. So I've been making myself chais all by myself. Like I do it from scratch. I don't buy like the concentrate, but I don't even know if I'm doing it right. I just looked up a recipe and I winged it. Or I wong it. No, that sounds wrong. I wong it.
That's gonna be in the thumbnail. I wong it. It's like what?
So for people listening, we have 2 clear mugs, okay, and they're matching for a reason because it's his and hers, and I put in some milk with ground cloves, cinnamon, and I do a little dash of vanilla syrup because I'm crazy. Nasty. And then I also put maple syrup, and then I froth that 2 times, cold foam. Wow. And then I have black tea with some ginger, and I also put the cloves and the cinnamon and the tea base. And then I pour the frothed milk on top, and this is what you get. You get a nice, and I'm not even trying to brag. It's pretty good.
But the tea in your drink
is the same
just
tea.
The tea I'm drinking.
Yeah.
Which it's actually 2 teas mixed together. One's like Earl Grey and the other one's cardamom.
Cardamom, yeah, I think.
Yeah. And it just kind of mix it together.
It's Persian chai.
This is like the play, and this is the opposite of play.
This is a representation of who we are, literally.
I don't need to play because I know I like it. It's like that TikTok you showed me.
Which one?
It's like Brits when they
that's bloody nice.
They drink the same tea they've had for the past 72 years 3 times a day,
and they're like, oh, that is bloody nice, isn't it?
I'll tell you what though.
I want to make a segment for our teas because I want to know, what are y'all drinking? Tell us what you're drinking because I want
cough syrup.
Shit, it's like cough syrup and some, what is it, rum or something? Slizzer.
Whatever it's called.
I wrote down some notes. Okay? And I was thinking, this is how I envision playing your way into success. I feel like it has like 3 steps. Okay. And I feel like the first one is process of elimination.
Okay.
Removing things from your life. I feel like the second thing is exploring. Obviously, because I feel like it's hard to explore when you have the weights on you, when you have the baggage. And then I feel like the third thing is it's like the pre-exploit. It's like picking something and sticking with it and being consistent. Committing. Yeah. If I were to package up what we've done and what someone who wants to start playing and making more room for that in their lives, like, okay, it's like 1, 2, 3. Let's get into it.
So it's playing your way to success in 3 easy steps.
Are we fucking copywriters or something?
So it's quit, explore, commit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is that? Where's that coming from? So like, could you give us an example or something?
So let's start with number 1, quitting. It's almost like you can always say, I always say this too, like quit your way to success, because a lot of times, like from birth to where you are now, you have accumulated so much baggage from people and from society. And a lot of spiritual people say this too. It's another way to put it. It's like you are basically, when you're finding yourself, you're not looking elsewhere. You're looking inside. You're looking more internal. Yeah. And I think that's because you accumulate so much baggage. This is a whole other topic, but we're going with the basis that your thoughts are not yours. Like you accumulate a lot of that from people, what they think and what's right, sense. What's wrong. Like you can't just trust every thought that comes to your mind because it's a lot of learned stuff. And so I think quitting is actively like taking inventory of your brain and choosing the thoughts that you want to have, choosing the things that you want, and eliminating a lot of stuff.
Yeah, just letting go of
a lot of stuff. So that could be thoughts, that could be people, maybe that could be jobs, that could be hobbies or activities or habits that just don't serve you. And I think when you're playing, you're like light as a feather. You're like kids, they don't have anything going on. They don't have bills, they don't have responsibilities. You have to be in that place to receive the flow,
So, now that you framed it like that, like it just kind of made me think that I feel like my story aligns with that and resonates with that, because like after I, had that LSD trip and had all the anxiety problems and
LSD trip. Shaheen took LSD when he was young.
Okay, I'll just give the quick version. So it's like I turned 18 and decided to take acid with my friends, and it was a great time until it wasn't, and then it was like it was the worst experience of my life. But then I kind of got over it, and then, or so I thought, and then 6 months later I just started getting like panic attacks every single day, and I went to a psychologist. They said I had post-traumatic stress disorder from the LSD trip. So it was just like a long road out of that. But
that was like a year too, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was like 6 months was like
the thick of it.
The thick of it. And then, slowly over time it got better and better. And then, there were always like milestones. So like, it's been like 10 years now. So I actually wrote a blog about it if you're curious. Anyway, I feel like what that did, it kind of like partitioned my life into two parts. Yeah. Like before and after. And I feel like one of the things that happened is like that experience was such a shock for me, like overcoming that anxiety, like the panic attacks, that I quit so much. Like there were so many things from my past, and like so many like bad habits, or just it's hard to explain, but like
unconscious behaviors.
Yeah, it's like unconscious beliefs, unconscious behaviors that I had accumulated as a child. You know what I mean? It's like
what were some of those?
Okay, so like one habit was like sleeping with the closet light on, or like one habit was sleeping with the TV on.
Sounds like you were just scared of the monsters.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was an anxious child, and I guess it's not super surprising. It's like I was always anxious on some level, and then when I took LSD, it kind of like exploded. And I feel like it's kind of double-sided, because that anxiety can come across as like fear, but it also can be interpreted as like I just like to think. You know what I mean? Because you're kind of like always in your own head,
right?
So it's like two sides of it. But anyway, I feel like what that experience allowed me to do was to just, essentially it was like a blank slate. It's like starting over from scratch. And instead of taking on personalities and beliefs based on a childhood experience, I started to rebuild myself.
Intentionally.
It's like I was 18, so it's like I had 18 years of experience, and then I started to like put myself back together, because I was like a complete wreck at that point. But I guess I did quit. I quit a lot of things.
So
when I made that transition.
No lights on when you sleep. No TV.
And then some.
You also lost 100 pounds.
I quit like overeating. You know what I mean? So I started dieting. I quit living a sedentary life. So I started being more active.
I feel like you also developed like a routine.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the strongest things.
I quit being so, I don't even know how to describe it.
Loose.
Yeah. Well, I also like quit video games.
Yeah.
Like I quit a lot of things, but I didn't even like view it as quitting those things. I was just like so hyper focused on not being anxious and like getting rid of the panic attacks that was the only thing that was on my mind. But kind of like coming back to it, it's like I never thought of it that moment was just me quitting
a ton
so
of
much stuff that I had accumulated during my childhood.
Yeah. And then honestly, I know we're talking about play as like this really fun thing, but especially as you get older, it's actually kind of a hard thing to do.
No, yeah, because it's uncomfortable.
It's very uncomfortable. And
it's
like when you're 18,
unpredictable.
Yeah, when you're 18, that's old enough to feel uncomfortable when you're playing. And at that time, you were going through something super traumatic, so I don't even think it felt like playing. But when you were starting over, you were kind of you had the freedom to create the life that you want to have, instead of just living on a default that you were already like brought up in. So.
And actually, maybe it's like a similar experience for a lot of people that have some kind of traumatic experience or some kind of very hard period in their life. It's that in order to get out of that, they have to quit so many things that is keeping them in that situation. And so I've never thought of it through this perspective of like quitting things, but it kind of it makes sense from my experience.
That's basically been the story of the last 3 to 4 years for me. It all started when I quit my corporate job, and I realized like at that job. I wasn't happy. I talked about that in the last episode, and it's probably all over my TikTok. But I quit that in 2020, and then I quit freelance, basically last year. Or no, like I quit freelance earlier this year, and this is, the journey now into entrepreneurship. And then I think basically from April, May, when I quit freelance, like officially, and I like let go of like actively taking on clients, I feel like I've been quitting mindsets ever since. A lot of them are like my own. Like that's another thing. Like quitting can be your own stuff that you put on yourself that nobody told you to do. And again, it's not totally yours because you learn from people and you take things on subconsciously. But like, I felt like one big thing for me going from like being a freelancer to an entrepreneur is that like, you don't have to do those things that you don't want to do. Like you don't have to do anything actually. Like it's all up to you. And that's something I've been realizing lately. It's like I had in my head, I had to have something serious and I had to have something fun at all times. Like that. And I noticed this over time. It wasn't something that I realized I was thinking. But when I went into entrepreneurship, I was like, cool. Like I have all this knowledge from social media and like how to, build an account and grow an account, blah, blah, blah. And that's what I have to do as an entrepreneur because that's what I know. And I have to listen to the people before me. And like what they say is like, do what you know. Like, take this skill and market it. If you have these skills, you can be a coach. Like I was subconsciously taking all that information in and I made that a rule for myself. And then I'm fast forward to now where I'm like, maybe I don't want to be a coach. Like maybe that's not what I want to be. Yeah. There are a lot of aspects of coaching that I enjoy. I love self-development. I love like self-help. I love helping people with like things that I find really interesting, especially like psychological stuff and like brands and like authenticity and stuff like that. But I told myself that something has to be serious about your job. Like as an entrepreneur, like if you're an entrepreneur, you have to have a title. You have to have like, you either have a degree or like you worked at somewhere or did something. Like you have to have credibility and authority in this space. And what's funny is that I quit my jobs. I eliminated things so that I can just live. That's literally the point of this podcast and my message. And I was making it so that I'm like, no, living's not enough. I have to do something else. Yeah. And I had to let go of that rule. I'm literally, as of like last week, I'm like,
you're still going through it.
I'm still going through it. But I bring that up to say like, you also have to let go of your own personal beliefs. And like, while I was quitting my corporate job and going through freelance, there were so many things I was learning about myself and like things being aligned. And you don't have to work hard all the time. You don't have to like grind all the time. Like I do like a grind, but my grind is like editing a video for 8 hours because that doesn't feel like grinding to me. That just feels like fun. Yeah. And I think that's the point. You want to find things that feel like fun, but to you could do it day in and day out and have a routine on it. And it doesn't even feel like a routine. It just feels like you were saying, it didn't even feel like you were like eliminating or adding. It just felt like you were like living. That's like the point.
Well, there I was just trying to survive.
Or trying to,
I wasn't even
survive.
Living.
Yeah.
That was fun for my life.
Yeah.
like R. Kelly.
You have to eliminate your own constraints, whether that's like you telling yourself like, oh, I have to work a job, or I have to make a lot of money, or I have to be friends with these people, I have to get to this status or whatever. Like you don't have to do anything. Right. That constraint is against play. When you tell yourself all of these rules, that is literally like the opposite of play. Right. Play there are no rules. There are no rules. When you're playing, you're creating rules, or like there's no set in stone rules. Yeah. But when you are giving yourself constraints, I see people say this all the time. They're like, no, I'm not going to do that. And it's like, why? Or I can't do that. And it's like, why? Question that. Why can't you? Why can't you be uncomfortable? Why can't you challenge yourself? Because you can't.
That's really good. Yeah. Because there's always some limiting belief behind that.
Always.
I can't statement.
Always. If you're saying I can't or I won't. I watched a video from this guy who said he quit his job. He brought I knew what this was, but I didn't know there was a name for it. But he called it like I forgot. It was like called it's called the fear setting. It's like goal setting, but with fears. And you basically write down the fears that you have when you say you can't do something. So you write down like, okay, what are you afraid of? And then with those fears, you write down like, okay, how can I avoid that fear? Right. So you like make an action plan on how you can avoid that. And then after that, you say, there's something else I think you do with it. It's like, I think the other one is like, if it does happen, what will you do?
Yeah, action plan.
Yeah, so it's like you basically just make your anxieties into just like more plain logical statements, and you're like, oh, it's actually not that bad. It's not the end of the world if you do something and it doesn't work.
Yeah, I've heard Huberman talk about that, not like specifically about fear, but imagining failure and obstacles is something that actually helps you achieve your goals.
And then when you're anxious, people tell you like, okay, accept that.
Just imagine the worst case scenario and be okay with it. Yeah,
just truly accept it, because I think once you accept it, it's like, oh, it's actually not that.
It's not that bad.
It's not that bad. Like, okay, you know, if I lose my job, then I won't have money. And it's like, but your anxiety usually stops there. But then it's like, there is still life the next day after that happens. Like, okay, then you can just apply to another job, you know? And it's like, life keeps going. There's always something. And I was having that anxiety too. I was like, oh my God, because I recently just let go of like my last and final client that I hope that will be my final client. And I was like, okay, well, I won't have income. And we are actively fighting just any income right now. So we're in a situation where like we don't just know.
Keep saying no to money.
We don't know where our next check is going to be coming from necessarily, and that's on purpose. And I was like, okay, I know I can't go to like, you know, the easy route of just being people's, you know, social media person or content person, whatever. And so I'm like, where's the next thing coming from? Especially if I'm not going to be trying to market myself as a coach and sell my services. And I was like, I don't know. And I have to just accept that. Like, I don't know. And I think that's okay, because the pain or the cost of what I hope to be my future success is just being uncomfortable for a few months and not knowing, and allowing whatever's supposed to come in, because the first step of play, in my opinion, you got to make room for it. And that's why you have to eliminate things. But then there's this room for magic, in my opinion, to happen, because that's when opportunities come in. If you're putting yourself out there, I'm not saying you just like eliminate things and sit down and do nothing, like absolutely nothing. You do need to be putting lines in the water so you have things coming to you. But I think the point is you're eliminating things that are not aligned. So you make room for more things that are aligned. So if you are not working at a job that you hate 40 hours a week, and you're spending now that 40 hours a week talking to people in, just say you want to get in health and wellness, and now you're not working at this job that you hate, that's probably like, I don't know, just like the opposite of your field. And now you're exercising more, and now you're going to gyms, and like you're talking to people who are in your space, and you're attending community events, and then all of a sudden you're talking to somebody at this community event, and they're like, oh, we actually have a position open at this health and wellness company. And you're like, how would I have ever gotten to that opportunity if I was at this job that was like the opposite of what I wanted? You know?
And it's like there's always opportunity out there, but it's just a lack of information. We don't know. The only way to get that information is through exploring. So I feel like this is a perfect
segue into my second point. Like that's the next thing. You have to, once you eliminated things, you don't just sit there and just, you know, look at the wall. It's like, okay, you know, like what's next? Explore. But this is where the fun and the play part, I think, starts to come. Like eliminating things is kind of hard, because it's like either breaking habits or routines, quitting something and letting people down, or all these things. Like it's hard to do. But then now it's like, okay, what do I do at that time? Because you know what's funny? When I quit my corporate job, I came into this like recluse. Like I was very depressed, and I didn't really know what to do with my time. I had no routine. I had always relied on school and a corporate job. I lived my life around them. I didn't have a personality outside of it. And I did, but I wasn't structuring my life based on what I wanted. And so when I left my job, I was like, okay, do I take a walk? I don't even know how to do that. Like,
I don't know how to take a walk.
You know, do I listen to a podcast? Like, what do I do? And I really had to build everything from scratch. And I know that sounds like, oh, great, you have all this time and it's super fun, you can do what you want. But like, it was very uncomfortable. I remember like I would take a walk, and like, you know what taking a walk in fucking Texas is like. I was on the highway.
A lot of people don't.
I was on the highway.
What highway?
I was just on the street. I was on the road, and it wasn't cute.
Right. Yeah,
it wasn't cute.
That main road there.
I was just on. It was not giving Pinterest YouTuber. Like it was not giving that. It was giving like boring
next to the highway
road. Yeah. It was basically just like taking walks, and I was like, okay, I see people listen to podcasts. I might do that, and then I would just try. I'd be like, but what time do I like doing them? But today I don't feel like doing it, and I'd had no discipline. because I didn't see, when you don't know the benefits of the things that you're doing in your routine, like you haven't done it long enough to experience the benefit, it's very hard to motivate yourself to do it. Back then, when I would read and when I would meditate and when I would take a walk, I didn't feel different. I would just feel the same. I'd be like, I don't want to do that thing. It's like, it's annoying. Just all downside. It's all downside. And then but I can't sit here and watch TV all day because I know that's going to make me feel bad. And I wasn't even interested in watching TV all day. So it was really confusing time for me.
So, what that reminds me of is if you're not satisfied, go toward discomfort. Go toward change. Go toward the opposite of what you do. And that's actually another lesson in reflection from that anxiety period. It's like, if the natural tendency doesn't work, doesn't give you the desired outcome, try doing the opposite,
and just keep doing it. You have to keep doing it.
So with anxiety, the natural tendency is to tell yourself, don't think about it. Don't think about it. Don't think about it, kind of thing. Or maybe to frame it like this, the natural tendency is avoidance. It's rejecting it, but rejecting it doesn't work. You have to do the opposite. You have to accept it. That's the only way to really get through it. And I've found that to be the case in a lot of different areas of life. And it's okay, the natural way isn't working, let me try to do the exact opposite. And I guess a more general form of that is if the way you're doing it now doesn't work, just try any other way.
Literally anything. And I you know what that makes me think of? It's I've heard this a lot on TikTok or somewhere, someone said it, but basically I think as you get older, especially when you do the hard things, it makes your life easier. It is harder as an adult, especially as an adult, to do the easy things and feel good long term. The harder things are, I feel like, as you're doing it in the beginning, the easier your life will be. If you work out, you're not going to feel bad throughout the day, and you're going to have more energy. If you, I don't know, journal, or you go to therapy, or eat right, you're just going to feel better. And I think when you try to avoid it, when you try to avoid getting ready in the morning, when you try to avoid, because I've done it, when you try to stay in bed all day, when you try to just eat whatever comes to your mind and watch TV, and after work I'm not going to do my work, all of this stuff makes your life 10 times harder. And it's when people see people who get up and they have these really crazy routines, they're oh, I couldn't do that. And it's I don't think you understand, they probably can't do without that, because their life is extremely hard if they even try to do the opposite. They're not motivated. Okay, I'm going to speak for some people, but they're not necessarily motivated because oh, this is such a cool thing to do. They're motivated because of the pain that they're going to experience if they don't do that thing,
And you just talking for whatever reason made me think exploring is just another way to say go toward discomfort. Because I think, that's the reality. As we get older, playing and exploring is uncomfortable.
It's hard.
So if you want to play and explore, just go toward the uncomfortable thing.
It's a good rule of thumb.
Is it? Yeah, good rule of thumb. But honestly, if I'm thinking back to childhood, we think oh, everything was so fun and carefree and it was so fun and easy. But honestly, I think we're just romanticizing the past.
You're right.
I think if I'm honest with myself, childhood was very scary. It was very hard. Everything was very unfamiliar. I remember the highlights, the fun parts. But if I'm really, I hated waking up and going to school. I was so anxious to go to go to class, to interact with people. You know what I mean? I was anxious to go to middle school. I was anxious to go to high school. You know what I mean? Especially in elementary school. I remember when my sister was she's 3 years older than me, when she was going from 5th grade to 6th grade. So she was leaving the elementary school, going to middle school. I was terrified. Aww. So it's actually childhood was very scary. It was terrible. It was very uncomfortable.
No, that is such a good point. And I say this too, so I can't believe I forgot. But I remember I was raised in a strict household relative to some people that I know. It wasn't the strictest, but it was pretty strict. We were the kind of household no TV on weekdays. I couldn't do my nails or get my eyebrows out, that kind of life. And so we had so many rules. It was a lot of rules. Like we could not hang out with people. There was no sleepovers. There was none of all that, none of that stuff that I think a lot of children experience. And so that kind of sucked when you care. Like, so like now I'm like, I don't care. But like when you're a kid, that is all you care about. Like you just want to hang out, you just want to have fun. All I could think about, like when I go to school, all I could think about was like, when's lunch, when are we having snacks, like when, like you know, I'm very intolerable to not having fun. Like I need to be having fun and have some kind of like spontaneity. So I hated school for that reason. I was really like a focused and like A student, because I think like also my parents were like, you have to make straight A's, but like I hated how we had to be there for 8 fucking hours every day. Like that's insane. And we were waking up at 6 a.m. And I think it only got worse because when you got into high school, and if you did anything other than going to class, like a job, if you were in any kind of sport or after school activity, you were around the clock. Like we were full-time employees, not getting paid. Like if you think about it from like, but you're waking up at 8 a.m. to like 4 or 5 p.m. you're in class, okay? And minimal breaks. And then you get after school, if you have a job, you're working there for maybe 4 or 5 hours. If you have clubs some days, or sports, you're there another 3-4 hours. Yeah. We haven't even talked about homework yet.
Yeah.
When you get home, you got to do your homework, and then you got to go shower or do whatever. It was insane. Like it actually wasn't fun. Like, and I think maybe that's what made the playing so much more fun. Cause like you had so many constraints all day. And that's another thing. Like when you have constraints, and I think that's why when you eliminate things, you have to put new constraints, but the constraints that you want, right? Instead of
they're aligned with where you want
exactly.
to go.
They're not constraints from like artificial constraints somebody just gave you. Right, like school and all that was artificial constraints. Like, yeah, it was helpful for the time. Right. Is it necessary to work 8 hours a day as an adult? No, I don't think so. So like that now it's like, okay, I'm eliminating what I learned from institutions and I'm just adjusting it to now. Do I need to work, for a set period of time a day? Yes, but I can choose how many hours that is now. And I think when you're a kid, like you have all of these like rules from like your parents, from school, from like maybe your social constraints, like what you can and can't do, what's weird and like what's awkward. So when you have the moments where you get to do whatever you want, you like go wild with it. You like go crazy, like playing video games and even just playing outside. Like kids overcompensating. Like kids now don't necessarily play outside, but like when we would play outside, we would do the wildest things. We would just make shit up, and like the jokes were like top tier, like I think there's a reason for that. And I think you almost have to recreate that situation, but as an adult now. And I think it's harder to access that, wild creativity, because you are not only the one creating the constraints, but you're also allowing yourself to play. Like before we wouldn't have to think most of the day, really. It's like between your parents and your teachers and your friends and society, you don't have to think that much. So when you did get to think, you just get to go buck wild. But now you're the one telling yourself the constraints and following it. Like that's really hard to do, especially when you don't know the answer. You don't have the answer. You don't know what's next. When you're a kid, you always know what's next. What's funny? You're like laughing.
Sorry. I'm just thinking.
It's just Shaheen the whole time. But I think that's a really good point. Like it was hard as a kid. Yeah. And I think we forget that. Like we had a lot of rules compared to what we do now. And maybe
here's another way to psychoanalyze it.
Okay.
We're so traumatized by childhood, we're just trying to run away from anything that resembles that experience. So we're trying to run away from novelty. We're trying to run away from like this uncertainty, this unpredictability, like
that's interesting.
Like not knowing what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
We're just like trying to run away from that.
Yeah.
Because when I was growing up, I couldn't wait to be 18. I couldn't wait to be 21.
So
I couldn't wait to be 16. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't wait to grow up. And I feel like maybe we just keep running away from that, because it's like you're saying, when you're young, it's just all rules and constraints. You know what I mean? It's like people controlling you. Yeah. It's like you don't have like agency in the world. You know?
You don't have any control.
Yeah, you don't have control. You don't have power. So it's like maybe you're just trying to run away from anything that resembles childhood.
But we go from like rules to like wanting all this freedom, but then why are we like going back into like more rules?
Yeah, I don't know.
I noticed that now we're like in college, I feel like that was peak like like I do whatever I want. Like I'm living, you saw people living all types of ways in college. Like they just had, people like there were the stoners and like the people who like the straight A students who were like always in class and always like everybody had their own kind of way to live. Yeah. Which in retrospect is actually so much more interesting. And then now we're kind of like, okay, let's go back to like, robotic. Everybody has a house. And, like why is that? I
like rules make sense because you want predictability. That's why your parents like were so strict.
I think. Sorry, I just got an idea. Yeah. But maybe it's because like we have all this novelty once we like leave the nest, and it gets overwhelming.
Right.
It's like overwhelming novelty and too many options,
too much uncertainty,
and too many decisions. Yeah. And then we're like, fuck that. Let's pick a corporate job. Like I can't do all
Let's
these.
Let's reduce the number of degrees options. Of freedom.
And I think it's almost like we go where we have so many rules, we get to max freedom, and then we go back. And then I think the next step, annoyingly, is to like try. Not you don't have to go all the way to like endless existential possibilities, but like you can kind of find yourself back in the middle where you have the constraints, you have rules because you need to pick something, which is our next point. But you need to get back to a point where you allow yourself to be kind of back in the wilderness again and explore, but you eventually pick something and run with it because you can't create anything sustainable without the consistency and dedication to something. And also it like you will go insane like if you are constantly thinking about all these possibilities, all these options. And I think that's why philosophers find themselves to death at an early age, because it's just too much for our brains. We can't handle it, you know.
So what does committing look like for you, or what has it looked like for you?
Ooh,
because you're talking about like this quit, explore, commit thing.
Yeah.
What are some examples?
I think committing for me in like very specifically has been choosing my wants and desires over everything else. I think that's what it looks like for me. And so my wants and desires to me, that is like, sounds silly, but like basically always having a good time. Doing things that make me happy and I'm having fun and I'm being creative like all the time. And so what those practically look like in my day-to-day life is like making content. I love to make content. I like telling a story. I like writing. I like video. I like pictures. I like just documenting things. Yeah, those are probably like the tangible things that are like my wants and desires. But I think truly at the core is I get to express myself. I think all the things that I like to do, content, fashion, traveling, I don't know, writing,
making chai,
making teas, and just like visuals, like whatever. Like I think all of those are forms of self-expression. And I don't like situations where I'm not able to do that fully. To me, committing has been making sure that that always is a part of my life, and not even just a part of my life, it's like majority or the entire thing. And this year that's looked like eliminating any work or any even money opportunities or anything that does not fit with that. If I'm not getting to create all day, if I'm not getting to work on my craft or get better at things that I feel like I want to get better at, if I want to be better at editing a video, if I want to be better at putting my outfits together or choosing like the perfect routine, like my perfect morning routine or night routine, that to me is in the way, and I have to make more room for that. And it takes a lot of trust to do that. Trusting yourself, because me choosing to not go in this like coach route, even though like I'm the one who told myself I have to be a coach, like me choosing not to do that is like me choosing those wants and desires again. And I forgot that I would have to keep doing that, which I think is actually more of the point than I think. Like going to be an entrepreneur or choosing a dream life, you have to keep choosing it. It's not that you just choose it once.
It's not just one hard decision.
And it's like you are always choosing it every single day. Your messages, your attention, what you spend your time on, you're always choosing it. And me deciding to leave my client and not market myself as a coach anymore, that was me choosing it again. And I was like, wow, like it feels good to do it, but it's also really terrifying because it's like the first time in my journey where I'm like, I have no clue what's going to happen next. It's easy to commit to something when you have an idea of like how it can look or where it's going to go. And that's why I wanted to be a coach. Like there's so many examples of coaches and how they're making money. But when you have no clue, like you're taking a risk, like a chance, you have no clue if that's going to work, that's like another level of like committing. It's like love. It's like, you know, when you're signing a contract, like for things that you just don't have an idea about how it is, but all I know is that they're my wants and my desires, and they have been, and they've proven to make me happy. And it's what I care about getting better at. I can see myself in the future doing it. Like, that's been the biggest commitment now. And I think prior to that, committing was like I was slowly doing that. From the moment I left my corporate job till now, it's like I've been slowly doing that. And
just committing more and more
to my thing, to my craft, to myself, to what I want, to what I desire. And I think literally next month will be like the first time in my entire life where I'm not working for anyone else.
Wow. Technically.
I have one like brand thing with,
but you're kind of like an independent.
But it's like really independent. Like, it's not like I'm doing client work, but it'll be the first time like my entire day is mine. And I know like some people are like, I mean, I can imagine some people are like, how much of your day do you fucking need, girl? Like, because I'm very big on that. Like, I've always wanted my day to myself. That's why I didn't like school. I was just like, I want to do what I want to do, because I'm not the kind of person who's gonna be like, I'm gonna be bored. Like, I want my day. I will keep myself busy. What does committing look like for you?
I feel a lot of the same things. Just kind of going all in on myself and the things that I like.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm in the middle of that now. I've kind of found this nice system, this nice mesh of things in consulting work, the data entrepreneurs community, and then content creation. Like, these things jive so well together, and they all feed each other. And it's all like any task that I do in one creates like ripple effects in like
the other
positive
ones.
Outcomes in the others. So it's like this really beautiful synergy. So I guess committing is just like keep feeding those things, keep going after it. It's like, you know, yeah, the signal is not that substantial. You know what I mean? It's like, what if I made like $1,000? You know what I mean? It's like, you can't survive on a couple $1,000, but it's like, well, it's working. You know what I mean? And even if I have to work like 3 times as hard, or like, you know, whatever, in these early days, just to like get enough to like scrape enough together to survive, I think it's worth it, especially in the world of like content and entrepreneurship and business. You're talking about things that scale exponentially. You know, things don't grow at some fixed rate or by some fixed amount. Things grow in proportion to the size of the thing. So like, for example, like your audience, like the number of subscribers you have on YouTube doesn't grow by some fixed number. It grows in proportion to the number of subscribers you already have.
Yeah.
You know, so it's going to be a percentage. So if I grow 10% and I have 10,000 followers, that means I gain 1,000 followers. But if I gain 10% and I only have 10 followers, that means my mom just decided to subscribe to the channel. You know?
That makes me think of 2 things. I want to talk about both.
Yeah.
One, the idea of how time is played into this and into play. And then 2, I want to talk about how Sean's being humble here, and he doesn't want to talk about something he really committed to, because he just turned down a 6-figure deal to continue to do what you were doing, right? You know, even though we could really use the money. But it happened in the same week where I both feel like we were like, or this week, is it just this week?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Crazy.
That's what I'm telling you. Time feels so different.
Yeah.
In this same week, we both realized like we have to keep choosing this. Like, there's going to be a lot of shiny, flashy things.
Yeah, a lot of distractions. And like what we were saying is like, the further you go, the bigger you get, the shinier the objects get.
And that's
the shinier those opportunities become.
Yeah, because we were considering this deal, which is very aligned. It's with the company that he likes.
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, it's like a startup, and they want someone to like help them with their kind of marketing side and kind of come in as, you know, some kind of creator partner, founder, collaborator type situation. So it's pretty aligned with like my space, like of entrepreneurship and data science. But still, it's like it's missing some key elements. You know, it's a bit disjointed from that beautiful synergy of like the consulting, the community and the content, it's like it's not exactly in that triangle.
Yeah.
It's not in that
it's
map.
like adjacent.
It overlaps with a lot of it, but it doesn't live inside of it. And it's like right now I can only take opportunities that fit inside of this triangle.
Yeah. One thing I want to bring up is time when you're playing is supposed to feel like non-existent.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That's a funny thing. And I think when you were saying like when you go from like 1,000 to like, I don't know, like 1 million subscribers or whatever, like when you're in that 1,000 or 10,000 spot, you're feeling like time is it's like slow. Things are happening slowly.
Yeah.
You're not paying rent. Or you don't have enough to pay rent. You're like, time is just like almost dragging in a way because it feels like I don't know what's next. I'm never going to make it to this next spot. But then it changes all in a second.
Right.
And
in a moment.
A video goes viral or, you know, you attract some opportunity that's going to pay you for the next 10 years or something crazy like that. And that's the world you're getting in when you start allowing room for opportunities. And I feel like it's funny though, because like when you're actually playing, when you've eliminated all the things that are not, you know, serving you, and you make room for the things that are, and you really just allow yourself to get into flow and just like play and do whatever, time is not it's valuable and you need it, but it's not something that you're like, it's not the same. It doesn't feel the same as when you're like, you know, at a job or something and you're working hourly. And like, didn't someone say that when you're doing something you don't enjoy, time moves faster? But then whenever you're doing things that you do enjoy, it's like slower.
So if you kind of look into flow, like the psychological state of flow, time perception is like a core feature of that like state. And it can be sped up or it can go by much more slowly.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not a flow expert, but you know, there's that aspect there. Another place you see time perception come up is when you're talking about dopamine.
Okay.
And so maybe that's kind of where you're getting at with like when you're doing something you enjoy versus you're doing something that you don't enjoy, and kind of mapping that to dopamine. Yeah. And then the relationship between dopamine and time perception. And again, I don't know all the details. I'm not a neuroscientist, but there is some connection there, and I'm sure if you wanted to get into it, there's a lot of literature out there.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting. Like I feel when I'm playing in the moment, like when I'm editing or I'm like working on like a script or making a video, like it doesn't even feel like it's there. And that's what I love. I love getting into that flow where you don't, and I think that's the point. Like you don't feel time. But then I also feel like now that we're in the beginning stages of, you know, building our company and we don't know what's going to happen next and we're very uncertain, it feels like very slow. Like things feel like slower.
For me, it's always felt like both fast and slow. And so what I mean by that is like the day can fly by. Yeah. But then when I think back to last weekend, I'm like, wait, that was last week? That feels like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying. It's like there's so much in such a short time period. Yeah. It feels like time is moving like slower. It's like, wait, what? When you're actually playing, I guess time feels like it's fast.
By, yeah.
Yeah. So that's what's interesting. Like whenever I'm like, if I'm sitting down playing with my toys and stuff, I don't notice like the time passing. And then the same thing when I'm like actually making videos and like we're doing a podcast, like time is going, but we're like, we're like, oh wait, really? Like, Yeah. So I just think that's really interesting. And I think it's a kind of a good sign. The last time I remember time going really slow, it actually was, but it felt like things were going fast when I was doing it, was when we were both planning events and our schedules were really busy when we were in college. I feel like college was like a good point. I always joke that I peaked in college because like I was doing so much. I like had 3 jobs. I was doing all these like programs. I was doing a lot of stuff, and it would feel like, oh my God, I did that last month, and it was like last week. And because it was so much in such a short period of time, but I was enjoying all of it, but it felt like I could never get enough of everything because it was happening so fast. But it really wasn't, because I was just using all the time I had with things I actually wanted to do. And so I was like almost cramming everything I wanted to do in like one day. But and like I like that feeling. Maybe some people don't like that feeling of like feeling like, oh my God, I barely got to touch all these little things, but I kind of enjoy that. It feels good for me. Because I know I'm really maximizing my time. I'm getting to do everything I want to do in one, you know, in a day, in a week or whatever. And like we just don't have a lot of time in our life in period in general. So it makes me feel happy that I'm getting the most out of it, because if I die tomorrow, I'd be like, well, at least I've been living. I've been doing something. Anyway, I guess I kind of want to end on like, just kind of, when you commit to something, you have to be consistent with it, and you have to keep going with it. And I think there's going to be a lot of distractions, and there's going to be so many reasons not to. But if it matters to you, if it feels like your dream life, I think it's going to be worth it. And like, we'll see. You guys can watch our journey and see if like we actually get to where we want to.
This actually goes anywhere.
Hopefully, we won't be making this podcast under a bridge. But
honestly, like I think we said this in the last episode. Like I feel like this is the life I want to live.
Yeah,
you know, I'm living my dream life.
Right.
The only trick is being able to pay the bills.
Right. And that's my hypothesis, that like if we keep doing this, it'll lead to the income. We're making room for our dream life, and it's going to give us the outcome that we also want, you know?
And we're the guinea pigs, so we'll see how it works.
We'll see. You're welcome. Oh yeah, let's give you guys some homework. You didn't think you're leaving here without homework, did you?
Because one came to my mind.
Oh, okay, Professor Dr. Shaw.
I was gonna say like make room for play in like your day,
that.
You know?
Yeah.
Like 30 minutes, an hour, or something like that.
30 minutes of play.
Whatever that means.
Yeah, whatever that means. If that's reading a book, if that's having a picnic with your friends, if that's like, start thinking about it. It's like 30 minutes of like opportunities even. Like, what can I do in this 30 minutes? Like, what can I create in this 30 minutes? You know?
Investigating like a side hustle or like a random business idea or project idea.
Just do it. Knit something. Finish something you haven't done before. Like
art, music, whatever.
Call someone that you haven't talked to, or like whatever. Like, just
like take a risk. Maybe even do something uncomfortable. You know, like go for a walk.
Go for a walk.
To the gym.
Listen to a new podcast. Do something, take a different route. You know, like just switch it up, because it's not about that one event in isolation. It's a principle. Okay. It's a principle of like, you are being intentional about your time, and you're making room for something that matters to you. And that's the whole point. Like, you can't create a life where you get paid to live if you don't do that. Like, you have to make room for things that are important to you, and one day they will become number one priority. But it starts with this. It starts with little
start somewhere.
Little 30 minutes, 1 hour here and there, where you just choose to do something for you.
Because, you know, kind of going back to your walk example, let's say, because you were starting from scratch, you had no routine. But if you had at least one routine, even if it was as simple as I eat lunch at noon.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I don't watch anything when I eat lunch. I eat my lunch and I focus on it, you know?
Yeah. That becomes like an anchor from which you can like build on top of. So it's like, oh, I eat lunch at noon. Let me just go for a walk for 15 minutes after lunch at 1. So it's like, okay.
It's habit stacking.
And then you do that. And then now you want to pick up another habit. It's like, oh, I want to, I don't know, start reading.
Right.
It's like, oh, maybe I can do that like right before bed. You know, you just start like exploring and trying things out and experimenting. And it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be seem silly at times even, but you do that for long enough, before you know it, like you're gonna have a schedule that looks like Elon Musk, who's like every 5 minutes is like blocked, you know?
And by the way, we're not like Elon Musk fans, but I just bring him up to say that like he lives a very different and intentional life, and I think he would agree that he's getting paid to live. Like, whether you agree with his practices or not, I think he has a very interesting life, and I don't think that was by accident. I think it was curated and was designed that way. So I think you can take a lot of, that's why I think watching and observing people who have what you want, or successful people, however you want to define them, is very important, because you can see how the things that happen in their life were by design. I like that you said it, like, you might feel silly doing this. Like, you might feel like, why do I need it? Like, that's how I felt when I was taking those walks. I'm like, why am I on the highway right now? Like, what is the point? just clap the mic. Like, it feels stupid because you have agent, you have freedom to do whatever you want. You're like, why am I doing something that feels uncomfortable? Why would I choose to do that? But slowly you will start to see the value in it, or not the value in it, if you do it for long enough and be like, okay, I don't like this actually. And you do discover a lot of things you like from things you don't like. So doing things are not a waste. When I was walking on the side of the highway, I realized I don't like doing that. So I stopped doing that. You know what I mean? Like, I changed the walk to where I was like, I like walking in the morning because it actually feels really serene and like calm. And then that became a thing. It's like, okay, I really like seeing nature. So, because when I was walking the highway, I was just seeing buildings. And then I changed my walking to walking on the side of the highway to walking in the trails. The preserves, and that felt better for me. And it was slowly, like, now we walk like every morning, and we walk, like, luckily our apartment has a lot of, like, you know, scenery, so I don't have to go to a park or whatever. But like, that taught me something about myself. And I was observing people and their routines and seeing like, oh, like this girl, the idea came to me because I was already walking, and then I saw this girl who had a pretty, like, aesthetic, nice routine, and she drives to a park to walk in the morning because she's like, it's important to get sunlight when you first wake up. Huberman says that all the time. And I was like, oh, I can just switch my walking time. That seems so much more desirable. And it's because I already had a routine. Yeah. If I saw her doing that and I like, oh, that's cute, but I don't even know where to start. You know, it's just like having something is better than nothing. Like having some foundation. So you're going to feel silly doing these newer things, taking an hour every Saturday to go eat lunch by yourself because you're trying to practice how to hang out with yourself. It's going to sound stupid when you don't have to, but over time, it's going to develop into something that you actually like. So it's worth it, you know? Go play with a friend, play by yourself, do whatever you need to do. Like, it's good for you. And this is how you're going to succeed. Cheers, buddy. Cheers. We'll see you guys next time. Salamati.